I guess really is still unclear, but we are seeing an uptick now in some of the hospitalizations.
Yeah, we are, and and unfortunately, we're still seeing long COVID. It does seem to be less with Omicron. It does seem to be less after vaccine. But yeah, we're seeing increasing numbers in the hospitals. We're seeing over 2,000 deaths a week right now, which is not a great plateau. That's over 100,000 deaths a year if we continue at this, and we expect things to go up in the fall and winter. And we're still seeing folks with that debilitating post-infection fatigue, cognitive dysfunction, all these other issues.
Can we talk about the immune enhancement? Like if someone gets reinfected, what really happens?
Yeah, and this has changed over time, and unfortunately not in the direction that many of us would like. It was early on, there was a lot of discussion back and forth, which is going to give you more protection, getting, I don't like to call it natural immunity, I like to say like getting sick, acquired immunity, and somehow surviving. So survival immunity versus vaccine. But unfortunately, what we're seeing with the Omicron and the immune evasiveness is people get one infection with Omicron and then the next Omicron variant and the next Omicron variant. Omicron does not seem to be doing a great job of boosting and giving us protection. But, and this is reassuring, repeated doses, even of the original vaccine, tend to produce this very broad protective antibody response. So still continues to be a challenge, but Omicron has really thrown us a curveball.
And now, I'm sure you read the VA study that repeatedly catching COVID appears to increase a person's chance that they will have lasting health problems after their infection. And they took a look at a lot of people in this study. This wasn't small.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is robust data, and it really goes. There's a lot of things that we sort of believe are true that apparently are not. And this falls into that category. We say, oh, I had COVID. I know what that was like. Well, you know what that was like, but what about the next infection? What about the next variant? And we did see this early on, sort of, I'll say anecdotes, which are now supported by the science, where someone would have a mild case of COVID. Few months would go by and now they're in the hospital and you're like, well, what happened last time you were fine? Now you're really sick. And I think that VA study really reinforces that your first infection, even if it's mild, a second, a third, a repeat infection, you could still die. Even if you survived, you could still get really sick. You could still have serious consequences, even if it was less severe that first time.
Yeah, and we're talking about 5.6 million people that they took a look at those hospital records of. I just really quickly also want to mention Novavax. Do you think that this will end up being something that will be in a greater use here in the U.S.?
So I think it will. And I say that with a degree of optimism. I know a lot of people have said, oh, these people, if they're not vaccinated, they're not going to get vaccinated. I don't think that's true. I'm not sure who these people are. I have a lot of patients who, they are waiting for a more traditional platform. That this is very similar to the shingles shot. And so I have like a list of people that are, once we get those supplies. And, we just heard that the U.S. government has invested in over 3 million. I don't know if that's individual doses or courses, because it's a 2-shot at this point. We think it'll be 3. But no, I think there's a lot of people and they just say, you know what, this mRNA, maybe that's not for me. I want something that's more traditional. I think there's certainly a place and it's going to help us.
All right, Michelle's joining the conversation. She says, if you get the relapse from Paxlovid, are you contagious once again?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I will just say very simply, we don't know. If you looked at the initial description of this sort of biphasic, and you get sick, you get your antiviral, which I do recommend, 90% reduction in progression, that's huge. Some folks during that end of that second week, or even a little bit later, start to feel crummy again. Some people even say, oh my gosh, I feel worse now than I did before. That's not necessarily just seen with Paxlovid. We see it with molnupiravir, again, big, huge, robust study. We see it in people who get no treatment at all. I give them a hard time and tell them, oh, you had the Paxlovid relapse. And they say, but I never got Paxlovid. When we saw the little bit of data at a David Ho's publication, it was someone on day 9 that they think transmitted. Well, you're still within the first day, so I'm not sure. So we do not know at this point. The CDC still making recommendations on err on the side of caution.